Hi, everybody. Well, it's week 5. We've come to the end of this 5-week course already, which is really surprising to Aaron and I. And also, I'm sure most of you have already, but if you haven't voted yet, please let this be a reminder to go vote on Election Day. If you haven't already, Wisconsin does have same-day voter registration, so if you haven't registered, you can still do that too. All right, week 5. This week, we're talking about digital tools and technology for community archives. And as with so many other things in this class, this is a high level overview of something that could be an entire course all on its own. But we're going to talk about collections management systems and a couple of particular examples, some other digitization tools, and a little bit about the final project plan that you're going to turn in. And the new work on your project, your community archives project, is going to be a little light this week because in addition to the uh, regular weekly assignment, you're going to pull everything together and turn it in as a project plan. So let's look at what that means. So collections management systems, choosing a collections management system for a community archive really means looking at a couple of main questions, like what levels of access or privacy controls are needed for the community and the members, and how easy does the system need to be for multiple types of contributors. Um, in my experience, these same questions might not be what somebody at a larger institution or an academic archive is looking at when they are first looking at choosing a collections management system. Those institutions might need to focus on capacity or other features first. But in community archives, since the focus is on the community and these relationships that we've been talking about for the past month, those community members' needs really should be at the heart of the choice of a CMS or collections management system. So from there, then you start looking at the features you need in terms of storage, display, etc. I should also say these two main questions are not necessarily what we have found in literature or papers that talk about how to choose a collections management system. This comes from our own experience in working with collections management systems and communities and different types of community archives. But in our experience, these are really the key questions to start with. This week, you're going to visit a number of different collections in different CMSs. There's several examples that are listed in the syllabus for you to look at. Look at how they're the same or how they're different, the types of features that they offer. What would be the most important features needed for your community archive? And then that spreadsheet of collections management systems is super useful in my experience. I know lots of archivists, community archivists and institutional archivists who use that spreadsheet of collections management systems, especially because it is crowdsourced in a way and is sort of part of an ongoing dialogue between archivists. So the spreadsheet is useful not only in terms of information about collections management systems, but even just in the categories of questions along that top row. Um, the features and capabilities that you see there are things that you can decide if you need or don't need in your own community archive. As a couple of examples, I wanted to go over two collections management systems that I've seen in use in community archives. First is Mukurtu, which many of you have probably heard of, talked about, maybe even used in other courses, especially if you've taken the TLAM course. You're going to visit an example of this week at the Plateau Peoples Portal. And Mukurtu was designed by and for Indigenous communities in particular. But the lessons of Mukurtu extend beyond the platform itself. One of the best things about it is that it makes an archivist or community archivist or memory keeper, it asks questions that makes you have to think about who in the community has knowledge, who is contributing that knowledge in the platform, who should be able to view what and when. So even if you don't end up using Mukato, which is free and open source and can actually be used for communities other than Mukato, these questions are important ones to ask as you're deciding what CMS you want to use, those privacy controls and access controls. I will say about Mukato that there is some support available for it, but not a ton. And mostly it's open source, which means you're pretty much on your own unless you have a decent amount of IT sort of experience and know-how. Another system I want to point out that I've seen in use is Omeka. There's many, many other options, of course, that are available for community archive use, but this one has been pretty successful in several community archives. It's pretty easy to figure out. It's pretty easy to figure out how to upload items. The information organization and the metadata fields are pretty straightforward. It doesn't cost that much, really. Like Content DM can be thousands and thousands of dollars a year. Omeka is like a few $100s a year. They also have a pretty robust help desk and team and a community of users for help, which is really nice. And because it's been around for a decent amount of time, at least in terms of collection management systems, there are examples of workflows out there to borrow or adapt if you're designing workflows for community members or volunteers. And you'll see an example of Omeka in use this week as well, in the Philadelphia Community Garden Memory Project. In both of these platforms and in several other platforms, audio and video recordings, what I've seen is that they're typically stored elsewhere and streamed or embedded into the platform itself to save on storage space within the platform. So for those of you who have audio or visual recordings, that's likely what you would do in a collections management system situation. As I said, there are many, many other platforms available and many other platforms you'll see on the spreadsheet. These are just two pretty widely used options that we have experience with and can talk about a little bit. Digitization tools is another small part of this week's readings. This is pretty straightforward, and again, I'm going to guess that most, if not all of you, have talked about digitization a fair amount in other classes. So I'm not going to go real in depth on it. But basically, whatever you choose for digitizing should be pretty usable by community members so that the community can contribute to its own, archive or memory keeping efforts. Um, Let's see here. So one resource I'd like to recommend, and I think we've recommended this elsewhere on the syllabus, is the Digital Readiness Toolkit that came out of Recollection, Wisconsin, especially the digitized section. Now, I'm not recommending this just because I helped write it. I'm recommending it because it was written with really accessible language in mind. And so if you're working with a community archive, this material could be helpful and easily understandable for training volunteers and community members. It's also just a super brief, kind of high level way to look at digitization, procedures, standards, formats, that sort of thing, equipment, if you'd like a refresher or if you haven't gotten this content in other classes. All right. So that's it for content for this week, in addition to, of course, all of the readings that you have. For the final project plan, let me first point out that the week 5 assignment, we do have a 500-word thing to give us on digitization tools and technology for this week. If you would please submit week 5 assignment on its own separately in its own assignment in Canvas, and then also attach that to your final project plan. So your final project plan is going to be week 5, but also weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go back and look at the last 4 weeks of assignments and make any changes that you'd like to make based on what you've learned, feedback you've gotten, discussions that you have seen or participated in the discussion board. Revise them as needed and then combine them all into one document, including this week's week five, and submit those as your final project plan. So this is the summary for the week: readings, discussion board, your week five assignment of the project plan, the final project plan. And then the last thing I want to just say is that the course evaluation is opening up this week in Canvas, and you'll probably get an email about it too. Please do really fill it out. Erin and I have really enjoyed teaching this class and working with all of you and reading your assignments and helping you sort of think through these things for the last 5 weeks. So we'd really love to run the class again, and your evaluation will help us do that. We're also glad to hear from you individually if you'd like. If you want to be anonymous, then of course fill out the course evaluation and include comments there. But if you feel comfortable, we'd really welcome you to email us as well and let us know, are there things that you particularly liked about the course, things that you wish had been covered? If there's too much overlap with other classes that you've already had, let us know that too. That helps us plan for the future. Any suggestions you might have for the next time we teach it. You're the first class to go through this syllabus and curriculum, at least with us. So we really do welcome your feedback so that we can continue to improve the course in the future. And that's it. It's been a wonderful 5 weeks. We will see you in the discussion boards and the assignments.